My mom tried to cut me from my dad's will, but he'd already transferred everything to me 2 years ago. I've been thinking about posting this for a while, and here we are. This is the story of how my dad handed my leeching mom and sister a reality check from beyond the grave. Grab some popcorn, because this one gets pretty savage. I'm Silas, 29 years old. Growing up, I learned pretty early that some families have normal problems, and some families have my mother, Valerie. She's the kind of woman who'd return a birthday gift you bought her, and then complain you didn't get her anything. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. I was 12 when I made the honor roll for the first time. Straight A's across the board. I busted my ass all semester, staying up late studying, actually caring about my grades. My mom looked at the report card for maybe 5 seconds before saying, well, Kelsey got Student of the Month in her class. Kelsey was 8 years old, and her teacher gave that award to literally every kid at some point during the year. But somehow, in my mother's mind, that was more impressive than straight A's. My sister Kelsey wasn't just the golden child. My mom absolutely worshipped her. 4 years younger than me, and according to mom, basically the second coming of Christ in blonde highlights. Meanwhile, I was Silas, the family screw-up. Didn't matter that I got better grades, played varsity baseball, had actual friends. In mom's eyes, I was always one step away from being a disappointment. Kelsey could have burned the house down, and mom would have praised her for keeping warm. The real kicker came when I was 17. I got a full academic scholarship to ASU's business program. Full ride. Everything covered. Tuition, books, housing, all of it. My mom's response? That's nice, honey. 2 weeks later, Kelsey got a participation ribbon at some community theater thing. Not a lead role, not even a supporting role, just a participation ribbon for showing up. Mom threw her a party, invited the entire extended family, made a speech about how proud she was of her talented daughter. I wish I was making this up. My dad saw it all. Douglas wasn't perfect, but he wasn't blind either. He'd pull me aside after mom's performances and say things like, your mother has her own way of seeing things, which was his diplomatic way of saying, your mother's insane, but I've been married to her for 20 years, and I'm too tired to fight about it. He spent extra time with me, though, made sure I knew I wasn't losing my mind. And around the time I turned 16, he started telling me to keep records of things. Emails, texts, conversations. Document everything. It seemed weird as hell back then. Makes perfect sense now. He died 8 weeks ago. Heart attack at 62. It seemed like it came out of nowhere, but honestly, it didn't. Living with Valerie for 35 years would kill anybody. Mom had been bleeding him dry for years, constantly nagging him about the business, about money, about how Kelsey deserved more support for her fashion career. Yeah, my sister's job was working part-time at some overpriced boutique in Scottsdale, calling herself a fashion consultant while dad paid her rent every month. Real impressive career trajectory there. The funeral was a performance worthy of an Oscar. Mom played the grieving widow like she was auditioning for a movie role. Kelsey played the devastated daughter, posting black and white photos with crying emojis every 6 hours on Instagram. Meanwhile, I handled all the actual logistics. Contacted relatives, arranged the service, dealt with the funeral home. You know, the usual scapegoat stuff. At the reception after the funeral, mom pulled me aside. Her voice was low, almost conspiratorial. Your father would want you to be practical about this, Silas. Kelsey has opportunities right now. Your father's estate needs to support that. What opportunities? I asked, genuinely curious. Her part-time retail job. She got that look. The one that said I was being difficult again, that I was purposely misunderstanding something obvious. She has connections in the fashion industry. Boutique management opportunities. This is her career, and it requires investment. Your father understood that. Sure he did. That's why he'd been quietly paying her rent for 3 years while she built her network by folding expensive t-shirts and suggesting accessories to people with too much money. We'll discuss it later at the will reading, Mom said. Translation. I've already decided how this goes, and you're going to shut up and accept it. That was 6 weeks ago. I spent those 6 weeks watching Mom and Kelsey plan their financial victory lap. They'd already started shopping for furniture. Already started talking about the vacation house in Scottsdale they were going to buy. Already started treating Dad's life insurance and estate like their personal ATM machine. Then the day of the will reading came. We met at Calder and Associates in downtown Phoenix. The office was all dark wood and leather chairs, the kind of place designed to make you feel like serious business was happening. Mom was dressed like she was attending a charity gala. Black Chanel suit, pearls, the whole 9 yards. Kelsey was right beside her in designer everything, scrolling through her phone and checking her makeup in a compact mirror every 30 seconds. Should we get lunch somewhere nice after this? Kelsey asked Mom. Not immediately. Mom replied with this practiced, sad face. We want to be respectful, right? These two had about as much respect as hyenas circling something dead. I was sitting across from them in the waiting area. Mom kept shooting me these looks like my mere existence was offensive to her. Kelsey hadn't acknowledged me once since we'd arrived. My Uncle Stephen walked in about 10 minutes later. Dad's younger brother, the only family member who'd ever treated me like an actual human being. He nodded at me, shook my hand, and sat down without saying much. Didn't expect to see you here, Stephen, Mom said with this tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. Douglas was my brother, Stephen said simply. Where else would I be? The receptionist called us back before Mom could respond with whatever passive-aggressive comment she'd been preparing. We filed into the conference room where Daniel Calder was waiting. Gray hair, expensive suit, the kind of lawyer who probably charged $500 an hour just to answer his phone. He'd been Dad's attorney for 20 years, knew the whole family situation inside and out. Probably sat through Dad venting about Mom's nonsense more than once. Thank you all for coming, Calder said once we were seated. I know this is a difficult time. Douglas was a good man and a valued client. Yes, very sad, Mom said quickly, like she wanted to get the pleasantries out of the way. Now, Daniel, I think we all know why we're here. Douglas and I discussed the estate extensively. Everything should be straightforward. Calder's eyebrow went up slightly. Mrs. Holloway, I think it's best if we proceed with the reading before any assumptions are made. Mom didn't like that, but she smiled and nodded like she was being patient with a slow child. Calder opened a folder on the table in front of him. Douglas's will is actually quite simple. It was last updated 8 months ago. 8 months. Kelsey spoke up, confused. But Mom said they just finalized everything recently. We did discuss certain matters, Mom said smoothly. I'm sure it's all in order. The will leaves several specific bequests, Calder continued, his voice neutral and professional. To Valerie Holloway, Douglas bequeaths his wedding ring and the sum of $1. The room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the carpet. Mom's face went through about 5 different emotions in 2 seconds flat. Excuse me, what? She finally managed. $1, Calder repeated calmly, along with his wedding ring. That's ridiculous, Kelsey said, sitting forward in her chair. There must be a mistake. No mistake. To Kelsey Holloway, Douglas leaves his collection of fishing rods and the sum of $1. Kelsey looked like someone had physically slapped her. Fishing rods? I don't even fish. I've never been fishing in my entire life. That was rather the point, I believe, Calder said dryly. I was trying so hard not to smile. I could feel the corners of my mouth twitching, and I had to bite the inside of my cheek. Stephen caught my eye and gave me the tiniest nod, like he'd been expecting exactly this. This is invalid, Mom said, her voice getting louder. The grieving widow act was completely gone now. Douglas wasn't in his right mind. I'll contest this. You're welcome to try, Calder said, still perfectly calm. However, Douglas underwent a complete cognitive evaluation 6 months ago. He was found to be perfectly sound. Additionally, he recorded a video statement explaining his decisions. Would you like to see it? Yes, I said. It was the first word I'd spoken since we sat down. Calder pulled out a tablet and set it on the table where everyone could see. He pressed play. Dad's face filled the screen. He was sitting in his same office, looking healthy and completely lucid. Clear-eyed, composed, maybe even a little amused. If you're watching this, I'm dead, he said, and Valerie's probably throwing a fit right about now. Mom's face went bright red. Let me start by saying I love my son, Silas, Dad continued. He's the only one in this family who never asked me for a damn thing, except my time. The only one who visited because he wanted to, not because he needed money. The only one who gave a crap about me, as a person instead of a wallet. Mom stood up. I don't have to listen to this. Sit down, Mrs. Holloway, Calder said. It wasn't a request. It was an order delivered in the polite language of expensive lawyers. She sat. Valerie, Dad's voice continued from the screen. You've been trying to bleed me dry for 35 years. Every business decision I made, you questioned. Every dollar I spent on Silas, you resented. You turned Kelsey into a spoiled brat who thinks the world owes her a living. And you tried your hardest to convince me that my son was worthless. It didn't work. Kelsey was crying now. The ugly kind, with mascara running down her face in black streaks. She had her hands over her face, shoulders shaking. I'm leaving you each $1 because you're legally entitled to something, Dad said. But here's what you need to know. Everything else goes to Silas. The house, the business, the investment accounts. All of it. I watched Mom's knuckles go white as she gripped the arms of her chair. But here's the thing, Dad continued, and I swear I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. It already transferred to him 2 years ago through a trust one established. Mom's face went from red to white in about half a second. That's right. 2 years ago, I moved everything into an irrevocable trust with Silas as the sole beneficiary. You've been living in Silas's house for 2 years, Valerie. Driving his cars, spending his money. Every credit card purchase, every check you wrote, every bill you paid. All from accounts Silas owned. That's not possible, Mom whispered. I had my reasons, Dad said. I needed to see if you'd change. If you'd start treating your son like a human being once you thought the money was secured. And you didn't. You got worse. You tried to cut him out completely. Told him he wasn't invited to family dinners. Spread rumors about him to relatives. Even tried to keep him from my hospital room when I had my health scare last year. That'd have been a fun day. Mom telling the nurses that Silas Holloway was estranged from the family and should not be admitted. The nurses calling me anyway because Dad had me listed as his emergency contact and medical power of attorney. So here's how this works, Dad said from the screen. Silas owns everything. The house, the cars, the business, the investment portfolio. Valerie, you get $1 and my wedding ring back. Kelsey, you get my fishing rods. Maybe learning a skill would do you some good. As for the rest of your lives, that's Silas's call. But if I were him, I'd tell you both to go take a hike. The video ended. The silence in that room was absolutely beautiful. Mom found her voice first. This is fraud. He was clearly mentally ill when he did this. I'm contesting it. Calder pulled out a stack of documents that had to be 3 inches thick. Medical records, psychiatric evaluations, video recordings of Dad meeting with multiple doctors. Mrs. Holloway, your husband had 4 separate psychiatric evaluations in the 2 years before his death. All of them confirm he was a sound mind. He was quite thorough in his planning. The house is in both our names, Mom said desperately. Community property state. He can't just. Actually, the house was placed in the trust before your last refinance, Calder interrupted. You signed the paperwork yourself. Did you read what you were signing? Mom's mouth opened, but nothing came out. She'd been too busy spending money to actually read legal documents. Kelsey was still crying, but now was angry crying. This is bullshit. Silas doesn't deserve anything. He was never there for this family. He never cared. I finally spoke up. Never there? I visited Dad every Sunday for 10 years. You showed up on holidays when you needed money. That's not true. I have texts. Hundreds of them. You asking Dad for rent money, car payments, credit card bailouts. Want me to read them out loud? She shut up real fast. What about the business? Mom demanded. I worked in that office for years. I built that company with Douglas. Stephen actually laughed out loud. Valerie, you answered phones part-time for 3 years in the 80s. Douglas built that company himself with his own 2 hands. Who the hell asked you? Mom snapped at him. Douglas did, Stephen said calmly. He asked me to be here for this specifically. Asked me to make sure Silas had backup when you tried your nonsense. And here we are. Calder cleared his throat. There are a few more things to cover. Mrs. Holloway, you have 60 days to vacate the property at 2847 Desert Ridge Lane. That's Silas's primary residence now. 60 days? Mom was practically screaming. I've lived there for 35 years. You live there while married to the man who owned it, Calder corrected. That man is deceased, and the property belongs to his son. You're being given 60 days out of courtesy. If you contest the trust, that timeline accelerates to 30 days. This is insane, Kelsey said, looking at me with something like desperation. Silas, come on. You're really going to kick Mom out? Yeah, I said. I really am. We're family. No, I said. We're related. There's a difference. Mom was pacing now, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. I could see her brain working, trying to find some leverage, some angle. The jewelry. I have jewelry that Douglas bought me over the years. That's mine. Items purchased with marital funds are subject to division, Calder said. However, we have complete documentation of every purchase made in the last 10 years. Any jewelry that can be proven to have been purchased by Douglas or with his funds will need to be returned. Everything was purchased with his funds. Mom shrieked. She looked at me with pure hatred in her eyes. You planned this. You poisoned him against us. You turned him against his own family. I didn't have to turn him against anyone, I said. You did that yourselves. I just stood back and watched. You're going to regret this, Mom said, her voice shaking with rage. I'll make sure everyone knows what you've done. The family, the church, your father's business associates. They'll all know you stole from your own mother. Go ahead, I said. I've got about 3.2 million reasons not to give a crap what people think. Stephen snorted. Valerie, you might want to quit while you're behind. But Mom was on a roll now, completely unhinged. That money was supposed to support Kelsey's career. She has real opportunities. Your father promised to support her. He did support her, I said. For years. And what did she do with it? Post pictures of her brunch on Instagram. Real valuable contribution to society. Screw you, Silas, Kelsey spat. Creative. You come up with that yourself? Or did you see in a meme? Okay, we're done here, Calder interrupted. Silas, I need you to stay for a few minutes to sign some documents. Valerie, Kelsey, you're free to go. They didn't move at first. Just sat there in shock, like their brains couldn't process what had just happened to them. Ladies, Stephen said, standing up. You heard the man. Time to go. Mom stood up slowly. Her hands were shaking. Fine. But this isn't over. This is not over. They left. Mom walked out first, moving like she'd aged 20 years in the past hour. Kelsey followed behind her, still crying, clutching her designer bag to her chest like it could protect her from reality. The door closed behind them. Stephen let out a long whistle. Good grief, that was brutal. Your brother was a thorough man, Calder said with what might have been the hint of smile. That he was, Stephen agreed. That he was. After they left, Calder walked me through all the actual documentation. The trust papers, the property deeds, the business documents, everything Dad had quietly transferred into my name over the past 2 years without anyone noticing. Your father was brilliant, Calder said. He structured everything so it wouldn't trigger any red flags. Small transfers, gradual changes in ownership. By the time anyone realized what was happening, it was already done. How did he keep Mom from finding out? I asked. Separate accounts, Calder explained. He maintained the joint accounts she had access to, kept them funded at normal levels. But but he moved everything else into the trust accounts. She never looked at the full financial picture because she didn't need to. The money was always there when she wanted it. So she was spending my money for 2 years. Technically, yes. Can she contest this? I asked. She could try, Calder said, but she'll lose. Douglas documented everything. He even kept a journal detailing her attempts to manipulate him and exclude you from family events. He kept a journal. Calder pulled out a leather-bound book, thick, filled with pages and pages of my father's handwriting. He started it years ago when he began to really see the pattern. Everything's in here. Dates, times, specific incidents. It's admissible in court if she decides to fight. I flipped through it, page after page of documented abuse. Times Mom had belittled me in front of family. Times she'd given Kelsey money while telling me I needed to be more self-sufficient. Times she deliberately excluded me from family events while showering Kelsey with attention. We spent another hour going through paperwork, signing documents, transferring titles, updating beneficiary information. By the time we were done, my hand was cramping and my head was spinning with information about investment portfolios and business assets and property holdings. One more thing, Calder said as we were wrapping up. He handed me a sealed envelope. Your father wanted you to have this. It's for you to read alone. I pocketed the letter without opening it. Stephen offered to buy me lunch. We went to this Mexican place Dad used to love, sat in a back booth and ordered drinks and tacos while the afternoon heat shimmered outside. Your old man called me about 6 months ago, Stephen said. Told me what he was planning. Asked if I'd have your back when it went down. He knew it would get ugly. Knew Valerie would go nuclear. My phone had been buzzing nonstop since we left the lawyer's office. Texts from relatives, from family friends, from people I hadn't talked to in years. Mom had clearly started making calls immediately, spinning her version of events. One text from my aunt, Joyce. Silas, your mother is devastated. How could you do this to her? I replied, talk to Calder and Associates. They have the full story. Another from my cousin Brad. Dude, what the hell? Your mom's saying you stole everything. Stephen's phone was blowing up too. He just ignored it, ate his tacos, and drank his beer like he didn't have a care in the world. You're gonna get a lot of that, he said. Valerie's going to try to turn everyone against you. Let her, I said. Anyone who believes her without hearing my side isn't worth keeping around anyway. Stephen smiled. Your dad would be proud of you, kid. We finished lunch, and Stephen drove me back to my apartment. The one I'd actually been living in. Not the small, struggling apartment Mom thought I lived in. It was a nice place. Downtown Phoenix, 2 bedrooms, comfortable. You gonna move into the house? Stephen asked. Eventually, I just said. Wanna let it air out first. Get rid of the Valerie stink. He laughed. Fair enough. You need anything, you call me. Day or night. Your dad asked me to look out for you, and I don't take that lightly. After he left, I sat on my couch and opened Dad's letter. The private one Calder had given me. Silas, it started. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And hopefully Valerie's losing her mind right about now. I kept reading. I'm sorry I put you through 35 years of her nonsense. I'm sorry I didn't protect you better when you were a kid. But I hope I made up for it by protecting you now. The letter went on for pages. Advice about the business, about investments, about finding someone who actually cared about me instead of my bank account. One last thing, the letter ended. Don't feel guilty. They will try to make you feel guilty. They'll cry, they'll beg, they'll tell you I wasn't in my right mind. Don't believe them. I knew exactly what I was doing, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Take care of yourself, kid. Love, Dad. I sat there for a long time holding that letter, thinking about the man who'd played the long game, so I'd be okay after he was gone. My phone rang. Mom. I sent it to voicemail. It rang again. Kelsey. Voicemail. A text from Kelsey. Silas, please. We need to talk. Too little, too late. Over the next few weeks, they went into full meltdown mode. Mom tried everything. Crying phone calls to relatives, posting on Facebook about ungrateful children, even showing up at the house and demanding to be let in. I had the locks changed within 48 hours of the will reading. She stood outside screaming about her property rights until the neighbors called the cops. The officer who showed up listened to her rant for about 30 seconds before cutting her off. Ma'am, do you have legal ownership of this property? I lived here for 35 years. That's not what I asked. Do you have your name on the deed? She tried the tears. The whole performance. He wasn't buying it. Ma'am, you need to leave the property or I'll cite you for trespassing. She left, but not before screaming at me through the window about what an ungrateful son I was. The neighbors got quite a show that day. Kelsey took a different approach. She went to everyone she knew, mutual friends, her co-workers at the boutique, anyone who would listen, and told them her version of the story. About how her cruel brother had stolen from his sister, how her fathers will have been manipulated, how she was getting justice. She tried to start a GoFundMe. Help me fight my brother's theft of my inheritance. It raised $300 before GoFundMe shut it down for violating their terms about legal disputes. Mom hired a lawyer, some ambulance chaser who took one look at Calder's documentation and told her she had no case. She fired him and hired another one. Same result. By the third lawyer, she was running out of money for retainers. The 60-day eviction notice came and went. Mom didn't move out. Said she had nowhere to go. I filed for formal eviction. The sheriff showed up with a notice. I had the utilities shut off. No power, no water, No AC in August in Phoenix. The temperature inside the house must have hit 110 degrees. They lasted 3 days before they finally packed up and left. Mom rented an apartment in a bad part of town. Kelsey couch surfed with various friends until they all got tired of her. The business transition was smooth. Dad had good people running things, and they were happy to see me taking over instead of Mom trying to meddle. Sales actually went up that first quarter because people weren't dealing with her anymore. I sold a house. Couldn't deal with being in a place that had that many bad memories. Bought a modern place in Scottsdale. Clean lines, huge windows overlooking the desert. Finally some peace and quiet. About 4 months after the will reading, I got a call from Calder. Mom was trying one last legal challenge. She'd found some lawyer willing to take her case on contingency, making claims about undue influence, about Dad not being in his right mind despite all the evidence. They're trying to tie things up in court, Calder said. Make it expensive for you, hoping you'll settle just to make it go away. They're asking for $500,000. I laughed. Tell them to get lost. Can you arrange a mediation? I asked. Face to face. Let them think I'm considering it. The mediation was set up at a neutral office downtown. Me, Calder, Stephen on my side. Mom, Kelsey, and their bargain bin lawyer on theirs. Mom and Kelsey looked rough. Mom had aged 10 years and 4 months. Kelsey looked like she'd been living on nothing but rage and resentment. We sat down across from each other. The mediator started her spiel about good faith negotiation, about finding common ground. I interrupted her. How much do you owe this guy? I asked Mom, pointing at her lawyer. That's not relevant. The lawyer said quickly. How much? I repeated. Mom looked away. He's working on contingency, right? 30% of whatever he gets you. So he's motivated to squeeze me. Got it. I turned to the mediator. Here's my offer. 0. Not now, not ever. They can spend the next 10 years in court if they want. Silas, please, Kelsey said. This is killing Mom. Really? Because last I checked, Mom's alive and complaining on Facebook. Dad's the one who's dead. The lawyer tried to jump in, but I cut him off. You took this case because you thought I'd roll over. Pay some nuisance settlement to make you go away. Here's what's actually going to happen. You withdraw your claim today, or I file a countersuit for attempted fraud, harassment, and abuse of process. Then I'm going to bury you in discovery, depose every person they've ever known, expose every lie they've told. Make this so expensive and humiliating that you'll regret ever taking this case. The lawyer went pale. Calder slid a folder across the table. I've already started drafting the countersuit, Calder said. It names you personally for filing a frivolous claim. You'll be defending your law license, not just this case. They dropped it 2 days later. 6 months after Dad died, I finally felt like I could breathe. The business was doing great. I'd made smart investments. The $3.2 million was now closer to $3.5 million. I started dating someone. Leah. She taught at an elementary school in Tempe. Had no idea about the money at first. When I finally told her, she laughed and said, that explains the weird paranoia about gold diggers. I started a foundation in Dad's name. The Douglas Holloway Business Scholarship. For kids who wanted to learn business, but didn't come from money. Kids who reminded me of Dad when he was young. The first year, we funded 12 scholarships. Full rides to Arizona State's business school. One of the kids sent me a handwritten thank you note. Said he was the first in his family to go to college. That note's framed in my office now, right next to a picture of Dad and me at my college graduation. One Sunday morning, I drove out to the cemetery where Dad was buried. Sat by his headstone. You were right, I said to the stone. You saved my butt, old man. The wind picked up, rustled through the trees. I stayed for a while. Told him about the business, about Leah, about everything. Didn't cry. Didn't need to. Just felt lighter than I had in forever. This was what he wanted. Me free. Me happy. Me living a life they couldn't poison anymore. I raised my water bottle to the sunset. Thanks, Dad. I owe you one. And I swear I could feel him smiling.
New stories every day. You know where to find me.